Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Invisible Condition. I'm your host, Jeff Pearson. By the way, it's not all in your head. We want everybody to know, no matter what the condition is, that you have that's invisible, we want everybody to know with Invisible Condition that you do have a voice, you do have a community, and you are not alone. It's huge, 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 very important. Now, I have an amazing guest today. Bryana Gregory is going to be joining us today. And after seeing many, many doctors and struggling with her health for several years in her 20s, Bryana realized that conventional medicine wasn't going to help. I can relate. I can totally relate. This is going to be a great discussion. She describes feeling overwhelmed and just too comfortable with the idea that she was just never going to feel her best. And that's not okay. After seeing over 10 different doctors, she was introduced to a functional medicine practitioner that used a comprehensive approach, which is, why are we doing that more? Taking the entire body into consideration. So she soon started feeling better and just never looked back, which I love that. So Bryana likes to remind people that our bodies function best when we're in balance, which I totally agree with. So she is a pharmacist, Nutrigenomics. Nutrigenomics. I'm butchering that. I'm sorry, Bryana. We're going to talk about that. And I'm going to let her I don't even know what that word is. I'm sorry. I'm a little tongue tied today. Pharmacogenomics. I butchered it. We're going to talk. Let's just bring her on. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. What is this word? What is that word? Pharmacode.
Well, it's kind of like drug names, right? You just break it up. But it's very confusing. So
oh my gosh.
It's Nutrigenomics and Pharmacogenomics.
It just makes your head explode just trying to pronounce some of this stuff. But it's no worse than trying to pronounce all those drug names, right? And going blind reading all the side effects, right? Oh, well, thank you for clearing that up. I'm sorry I butchered it. That's just the nature of the game when it comes to that kind of stuff, though. So let's start by giving the audience a little bit of background in your story. Can you just share a little bit about that moment when you realized that something was wrong? Something was seriously wrong with your health, and how did it impact your daily life? And especially like you're a competitive golfer at the time, right? Like that couldn't have helped. How did that all come about?
Right. So as you mentioned, I'm a pharmacist, but when I really got sick, this was way before that happened. So I was definitely a patient before I was a pharmacist. And I think that kind of paints a little bit of a different picture for people understanding what my journey was. And you're right. At the time I was competing as a professional golfer. So that was my livelihood.
Nice.
And it doesn't really matter if you're a professional athlete or not. If you're not able to go about your daily life in the way that you feel well, or even that you're able to survive, rather than thrive, it's not going to be okay.
Right.
So a little bit about my story and how I got there is I was more or less a very, healthy kid growing up, ate well, was athletic. Okay. That was all great. I took a trip to Europe about a year or so before I got really sick. And what happened is I ended up getting a very common bacterial infection that often lives in the stomach and the gut called H. pylori. It's not uncommon, but it oftentimes goes undiagnosed. And so when that happens and it remains undiagnosed for months, it can really wreak havoc on your body. And that's what it did to me. So it started basically ripping apart my gut, more or less, giving me leaky gut, started really impacting the foods that I could eat, but I didn't know what was going on. So, you and I have talked about this before, that everything in the body is connected and no systems are segregated. So even though what was going on was in my gut, I was having, things going on like in my mouth and in my esophagus and pain around my body. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So because I had this pain all over, I was seeing several different types of doctors to address the pain in each individual area. Right. And so it was, okay, well, we're going to do an esophageal endoscopy. Basically, we're going to stick a camera down your esophagus and we're going to look around. We're going to poke around. We want you to do barium swallows so we can get a good idea of what's going on in the gut. I went to a cardiologist. I kid you not, said, well, you have this little aberrant branch of your subclavian artery. Talk about stuff that's hard to pronounce, right? Basically, it just means that you have a little vessel that's going in a different direction than most people's. Big deal. He wanted to get in there and cut it out, rearrange it, whatever, do his thing. And thank goodness my dad said, no, absolutely. We're not doing that. And so that just, I guess, kind of illustrates the different things that I was offered, not to mention the long list of medications, antibiotics, all that stuff to address all of the different issues that I was having. But not one person said, I wonder if that issue is connected to that issue. And so luckily, my mom happened to connect me with a functional medicine practitioner. And that was the first eye-opening experience for me of really understanding the functional approach. I think, and what I mean by that is everything's connected, right? Everything functions as a unit. And we're a very well-oiled machine, so long as we're in balance and everything is speaking to each other as the individual parts should. But I think inherently we know that as individuals, but we are taught, we are given information in a way that says, well, there should be a pill for every ill. You got this going on, you need a pill for that. You got that going on over there, you need a pill for that. Oh, and now you have a side effect because of that medication. Don't worry, we have a medication for that too. So I became very discontented with that, but personally because I wasn't getting better. The meds I was being given, the surgeries or procedures I was being offered, like nothing was helping. So, I started to kind of second guess, as a lot of people do, what's going on here? I'm not getting better. Let's take a different approach. So that functional medicine practitioner was able to do some testing to discover I had that bacteria and then help me do some food elimination style type diets, get the body back in balance. And that's really the short version of what kind of launched me on this path. But I didn't become a pharmacist for several years later. So, I'm still a conventionally trained pharmacist, but I don't practice conventionally. So I was trained through the same doctor of pharmacy program that everybody is now. But rather than going to work in a Walgreens, a CVS, a Walmart, and I just say those because those are very common places that people that graduate pharmacy will work. I work in an independent pharmacy and I'm a compounding pharmacist, and I specialize the medications that we make directly for the patient based on their needs. So they only get what they need. They don't get any of that other trash in those medications that they don't need, that are not part of the healing process. And that's very important to me to uplift and empower patients and kind of redirect them, course correct them onto a path of healing, rather than keeping them on the downward path of sickness.
So the idea for you, which should be the idea for more people, but is to actually figure out what's going on, prescribe something that actually will make it better so that you're not on the medication long term and you actually get better and don't have to come back.
Exactly. And that's what we refer to as root cause medicine, right? It's, it's, if your plant starts to die, you see what's going on above the soil, but typically the real issue is not coming from what's happening above the soil. It's, usually some sort of an imbalance in the soil below that is causing an issue. So with my patients, what I do is I take that root cause approach with them to understand what's been going on since they were a kid, what's going on in their adult life. What are the stressors? We have this phrase or this saying in medicine: when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Basically, think the most obvious thing. Don't go down this rabbit trail of things that it could be, or just address the symptom when there is a reason why it's happening. Because conventionally, I mean, it's funny, right? But it's true. Conventionally or commercially available drugs are actually designed to address the symptom. They're not designed to address the root cause. So, I am a pharmacist. I do believe in the power of medications. And in many cases, medications like antibiotics, they might be necessary, but I will tell you, and I've talked about this before, is that they're just overprescribed, right? We don't need to be throwing antibiotics at every little thing, because that's how we develop antibiotic resistance. And then when you do really need them, you no longer respond. And that is where an actual problem lies. So when I talk about medications and the medications that I provide to my patients, in my specific case, they're compounded medications. So if someone's not familiar with what that is, it's made in the laboratory at the pharmacy where you're picking up the medication. And that dosage is designed or customized for you based on your individual needs, your individual dose, and whatever else is going on. And so the medications that I dispense to my patients and the ones that I recommend are always designed for replenishment. You talked about how balance is so important. And, I want to remind people that we don't get sick because we have some sort of a lack of a pharmaceutical drug in our blood. You don't get sick because you don't have enough Prozac. You don't get sick because you don't have enough diflucan in your body, right? You get sick.
I've said that. The best way I've heard it said is you're not depressed because you have a Zoloft deficiency in your system. It's not.
Right. And I'm pretty sure you said that to me before.
That is my favorite way of that. I don't remember where I heard that, but that was my favorite. That's like the most clear way I can possibly think to put it. You're not missing a synthetic pharmaceutical in your body. That's not the problem.
Right. Because believe it or not, there was a time long, long ago when those drugs were not developed, when people weren't having these issues either. Right. It's like the more medications we get approved, the more issues we have, the more anxiety we have, the more on edge we are, the more diseases we are encompassed with around us, the sicker our families are getting. It's like, let's just stop. Can we just stop? Let's just remember that our bodies are so well equipped to heal. We don't plug in anything. We don't have to recharge. We're not battery operated. We have everything that we need in our body to heal. But we do have to be sure that all the systems in our body are receiving the support that they need to function optimally. So is that a vitamin? Is that a mineral? Is it nutrients from food? Is it sunlight? It's all of those things, but in what particular balance for you, Jeff, versus me? Because that's going to be very different for two people. We have two very different backgrounds. We have, probably very different deficiencies that we need to supplement up for. And so that's what I love, is that I truly believe, partially because I've been there, but also partially because I'm a clinician that sees patients like this every single day, that we all deserve to be treated as an individual. And I feel like the majority of the work that I do with patients is maybe less clinical. Actually, sometimes it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of seeing them. You want to feel seen, right? You want to feel seen. You want your listeners to feel seen. That's why you do this, right? You want them to feel like they have a voice and like they're understood as an individual. And that's why I love the approach I'm able to take, because it's customized, and people not only heal, but they feel empowered to go forward with life, and not focus as much on their sickness, but just do what they love to do. Spend more time doing that.
Exactly. And I love the approach that you take, which is the opposite of what traditional Western medicine and pharma in general, that they take, because like you said, there's a pill for every ill. But what if you could what if overall you could treat, why are we not treating the body as a whole, instead of, because every time correct me if I'm wrong, as the pharmacist here, correct me if I'm wrong, but when a drug gets approved by the FDA, it's approved for this, this specific purpose, right? But once it's approved, it can be used. If they find another use for it, and they're like, oh, it actually relieves this too, then they can remarket it as something that, could be used to relieve this ailment, but then that's where the other 2 minutes of the commercial come in with the side effects, right? Because you have to warn them about all that, because it wasn't originally approved for that. So am I crazy, or is that about right?
Yeah, that is right. And the other thing that I see a lot is that when, a space that I've been focusing in a lot is because I get approached about it quite frequently, and because we're seeing a huge uptick in autoimmune conditions, cancer, neurological issues, is this idea of repurposed drugs or repurposed pharmaceuticals. Yeah. So we actually have a lot of really good old drugs on the market that are finding that they can be used for cancer. They can be used to support cancer treatment. Let's say that someone does choose to get chemotherapy and that's their choice of treatment. We have other options that support the body more naturally, but that they're repurposed from an old, like you said, an old indication or an old use, and they're used for something different. But what I wanted to say is it is shocking how the price of those drugs go boom through the roof once they figure out that there's a new indication, which makes me sad, because it doesn't really matter what condition somebody has, but I've had cancer in my family, so that one hits home for me, is that when you have a drug that's repurposed and now we find out that it's beneficial for cancer, do you really think it's okay to quadruple the price? Come on. So you're going to tell people that they should be able to have access to something, but then you make the price inaccessible. This is unfair.
EpiPens was a great example a few years ago, right? I don't remember exactly. I don't have an allergy that require, I've never had to use an EpiPen, thankfully, but my father-in-law has a terrible peanut allergy that, he that's a thing for him. But those things, at one point, I'm trying to remember what it was a few years ago. They I don't know if it was whoever was producing them or something like what you're talking about, but the price of them just like increased tenfold. And instead of being less than $100, it was like $900 for an EpiPen or something.
Right.
It's just crazy. Why, if you're multi-purposing this stuff and you're able to use it for more things and you're going to get more business out of it, why wouldn't you reduce the cost? Right. You're going to be getting more business anyway by volume, right? So, but what am I thinking? I'm sorry.
We can't solve all of those problems in an hour, right?
Nobody's going to listen to little old me about that. But I'm not a pharmaceutical company, so. But anyway, well, I tell you what, this is going in a really good directions, and I want to continue down this path. But right now, I think we're going to go to a break real quick. We're at a good spot for that. And so we're going to go to a break, do a commercial. And then when we come back, I want to talk about Nutrigenomics, because that is part of the reason that we're here. So so stick around. If you don't know what that word means, stick around. We'll figure it out, right? You're gonna learn a lot in the next segment. It's going to be really cool. So, all right, everybody, stick around. Don't go anywhere, and we'll see you soon.
The Club eFit Home Portable Gym System is a groundbreaking new system that can help everyone at any fitness level. You can be the happy, fit person you always wanted to be, and Club eFit can make that happen by helping you get the body you deserve in the time you can spare. With workouts ranging from cardio, core, to total body toning, it's easy to get started. Start taking care of you today. To make the change, go to clubefit.com now.
Hi there, I'm Dawn Livingston, your host on the Transcend and Succeed show. Join me Fridays at 2 p.m. Central for limitless inspiration and ways to help you transcend your limitations. Tune into the Achieve TV network and the Voyage to Vitality channel. Transcend and Succeed show, right here on A360 TV.
Welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that technical glitch here at the beginning of the commercial break there. That was weird. I don't know what was going on. It was just restart. Welcome to live TV, everybody. Why is it doing it so much? Anyway, all right. So, Nutrigenomics. First of all, tell me what that word means, and then, tell everybody. That is not a term that I'm familiar with. And so, what is it, and what's going on there?
So if we just break down the word, first of all, we'll start with the genomics part. I always get the question, what is genomics? Genomics is the same as genetics. People know what genetics is. It's our DNA. And so when we say Nutra, we're referring to nutrition. And when I say nutrition, I'm not just talking about the food that you eat. We also get nutrition from our supplements and our vitamins, which are very important. What I find a lot of times is that people's ailments, their illnesses, or their imbalances come as a result of being deficient in very simple vitamins and minerals to replenish. So that's why this type of testing, nutrigenomics testing, is very important for us to understand how the DNA, our DNA, the stuff that makes us so unique from everyone else, actually impacts our nutrition. So essentially, when I do nutrigenomics testing with a patient, what we're trying to figure out is how, based on their different genetic variations, because we all are different from each other, how their DNA impacts the way that they absorb nutrients from foods, absorb nutrients from their vitamins and minerals, and what areas we need to focus on to support more. So one of the areas that a lot of people are familiar with is methylation. Yep. They've heard of the MTHFR gene, and that one gets a lot of attention. And I'm glad that we're trending that way. So people are starting to think, I've heard of methylation before. I've heard of MTHFR. I wonder, should I get that tested? Is it important for me? So methylation is one of those very crucial processes to life in general. It's what allows our cells to literally stay alive and function. It's also very important for vitamin B absorption, production, delivery, and absorption. So as an example, a lot of times you'll see products that say this is a fortified food product. And so if they're putting types of folate, for example, like a type of B vitamin in that food, it's vitamin B enriched. That sounds good, right? But in many instances, it is not, because if your body cannot utilize that particular type and break it down, it's actually toxic to you. And this just kind of goes back to this idea that we think that, oh, we trust the people that make our food and the labels that are on there, so it must be good for me.
Well, the combinations, right? Like if just throwing something else in there is not necessarily a good thing, because maybe the common, like I know certain minerals or vitamins or certain things are better to be taken with certain things, right? So but if somebody's not paying attention, or the company that's making those supplements are not on the ball, they might be combining things that are going to either cancel each other out, or that just because it's all in one spot doesn't make it better,
Right.
So
right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that so many people, well, I know this for a fact because I hear it from my patients, is that most people are very confused about nutrition advice. You can go on any media outlet and find nutrition advice. And I'm not saying that any of them are bad or incorrect, but a lot of them are, right? And so you have to take that with a grain of salt. Look at your source. But again, nutrition is very individualized. So nutrition for the masses is not the same. If we think about the type of foods that we eat, everybody has a different body type, and what works for one person is not going to work for the next person. The same thing with activity. So the type of activity, so high intensity, or should it be low impact, or should it be endurance? All of those different activity type choices, believe it or not, do have a relationship with the way that your DNA behaves. So when we look at DNA testing, and just to draw this delineation, the type of DNA testing or genomic or nutrigenomic testing that I do does not have anything to do with ancestry. So I'm not going to tell you that, your family came from Scotland or this or that or the other thing. We're looking just at how your DNA impacts your wellness, period. And so we're looking at how your body detoxifies. If we live in really toxic environments, right? Even if you're in like inner city Houston, like me, or maybe you're closer to the mountains like you, the air quality is going to depend on wherever you are. And so the way that your body detoxifies out maybe the smog, or if you live near a plant, or just living, eating, breathing in the world we live in today, it's pretty toxic. So it's important for us to know how you clear out toxins. How do you methylate? How does your body react to the inflammation that you create internally? Maybe when you eat certain foods, or when you get sick. Like, why do some people bounce back from sicknesses much quicker than the next person? Don't think that doesn't have anything to do with your DNA, because it certainly does. So when we get that look inside, we get a better idea and of how to very intentionally heal, so that we're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. I say test, don't guess. And the cool thing about nutrigenomics testing is you actually only have to do it one time. So a bit like lab testing, where you do certain lab panels or lab tests, like a CBC, it's kind of a general one. It's going to cover everything. Or someone says, oh, I just want to look at my vitamin D levels, or I just want to look at thyroid. That's a particular panel that you do, a blood panel. With nutrigenomics testing, we can test any of those things, or we can do a comprehensive type test, but your DNA does not change. The DNA you're born with is the DNA you die with. So it's neat because we only have to do that testing one time, depending on the area that we're looking at. And what we do know from that information that we find is how we can optimize your genes. And that's the important part, because people say, well, if it never changes, how come we don't have to retest, all that type of thing? Well, we have all the information that we need. That's your baseline. I tell people that's your baseline. Now we understand better how to upregulate certain genes, or turn them on. Sometimes we'll say turn them on or turn them off, because some of our genes will activate different processes in the body that make us, let's say, too overreactive. Like in the case of someone who has really bad allergies. Why does that happen? They might not live in a place with a ton of pollen, but they just have really bad allergies to the point where their quality of life is very, very low. Well, I can guarantee you, we look inside and their inflammatory profile is going to be, off the wall. So we need to figure out how we can calm down certain responses so that they can live a normal lifestyle.
Okay. So what about, I've heard this. Maybe this is off topic. Maybe you can address it. But it just popped into my head while you were saying that. I've heard people say, well, okay, I have this, it's hereditary and I have this gene that's predestined towards this or that, or I'm, but if I don't, like with alcoholism or high blood pressure or high cholesterol or high or what, but if I don't do a certain thing, then it's kind of up to me. Like if I don't take that first drink, then I don't, kick off that gene, or if I don't, eat high cholesterol food, then I don't kick off that gene. What's up with that? Like I've heard that a lot. Is that a thing, or does that have science behind it, or am I?
Yeah, you bring up a really good question, Jeff. So there's a couple of things surrounding that. Of course, we are genetically related to both mom and dad. So we get some from mom and some from dad. And you have this genetic inheritance that there isn't necessarily an alcohol gene or a drug gene, but based on research that looks at patterns that humans from several generations exhibit, they can say, genetic researchers can say, okay, well, if you have this specific sequence of genes, then you're more likely to have an addictive personality. Okay, but like you said, you still have the responsibility every single day to make the choice to pick up that, bottle of alcohol, or, engage in that drug use and that activity, because that you may have an addictive personality. Now, let's kind of go back to that addictive personality. What does that mean? Those are behaviors that are driven by something that's biologically happening in our body. It's a thought. It's maybe a deficiency that makes us crave something that we shouldn't want to, right? And so it's not just that there's an alcohol gene. It can be that we have an addictive personality, or the neurotransmitters, the nerves up top, don't communicate and send those messages to each other as they should. Like, you should stop drinking now. You've had too much.
Yeah.
So you're right. So that's a good example. If there are some behaviors that tend to be rooted in genes, so to speak, that we can use supplementation like vitamins and minerals to get the body back what it's deficient in, or help the nerves communicate better, or heal the gut. All of these things are tools that we use to combat those choices or those cravings, or even sometimes we'll use medications to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that we can, for example, I'm thinking of a compounded medication called low dose naltrexone, which is different than the normal strength naltrexone that's used to actually help people wean off of drugs and alcohol, particularly opioid medications. So that'd be like your hydrocodone, those types of things that control pain. Well, if you think about why that works, it's simply because that medication binds to the same receptor site or the same area in the body as that pain medication would. It's also, interestingly, where your endorphins come from and are secreted from. So the reason it controls pain is because it's helping with endorphin release. So, all of these things are interwoven with each other, which is why we can't look at everybody the same. We have to understand what their background is or what these potential habits are, so that we can have our DNA work for us rather than against us. I always say some of our genes behave and some of them misbehave. So what do we have to do to be sure that they all get to behaving?
Well, and that's also back to your point from earlier about everything being connected, and why are we treating this symptom and that symptom and this condition and that condition with all separate things, when functional medicine, should be treating it as a whole, treating your body as a whole, and not that it's so much less risky. If you're treating this with this medication and that with that medication and this over here with this medication and all these different medications, maybe God forbid they were prescribed by different doctors too, right? And maybe they didn't communicate, and that could be harmful. That could be dangerous, So if you're treating it as one whole unit, it just seems safer too.
Right. A big part of what I do is med-rec, or med reconciliation. So I'm reconciling all of the medications that a patient is on. And oftentimes that is coming from several different doctors, because they may have been referred to several different specialists.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Dr. A actually generally doesn't know what Dr. B is prescribing, or they'll say, I don't know enough about that, so I'm going to say you should either stop it or I'm just not even going to go there. And that's a pretty typical response that I hear. So I've got patients that come to me with, I kid you not, pages, 12-point font, pages of medications. And for one, is that not only expensive, it's overwhelming. And I mean, come on, you're going to have duplications on there. And I see it all the time where there is medication duplication. So we want to get rid of that. We don't need to be overloading our body with medications or even extra supplements that we don't need. We want to refine it. And I think that that's really, really important for giving the body back its ability to heal and do what it knows how to do without overloading it with so many medications and supplements.
Exactly. I mean, thankfully, thank God, I have in my whole life, I've never had to take a regular medication for anything. Which is kind of surprising, given my my medical history and the condition that I was born with. But and it is not typical for somebody with hydrocephalus to not have to ever take a medication. But I feel so fortunate to have not had to balance that, because I hear about people, because seizures can be a common side effect of hydrocephalus, and other conditions can just, and then you start going down that road, and people start prescribing anti-seizure meds, and then they start prescribing migraine medications, or they do, and so I don't know. Could something like that be? I mean, you're not going to cure hydrocephalus with a functional medicine doc. I mean, let's not go too crazy here, but could it maybe, somebody with a condition, with a congenital condition like this, go to a functional medicine doc and maybe some symptoms of hydrocephalus, or some symptoms of I don't know, fibromyalgia, or some other invisible condition could be made better or less impactful by doing something like that?
Absolutely. And part of that is that many times it may be genetically related. So I do see that in, let's say, something like cystic fibrosis, which can impact little babies, right? And there are certain tools that we can use. We know which genes misbehave in those cases, that we can optimize those genes with, so that we don't get the changes or the deficiencies or the malfunctions in the body that actually occur in something like cystic fibrosis. I'm just using that as an example. Or like fibromyalgia, you said, these are, well, something like fibromyalgia or MS, multiple sclerosis, things like this. They're very highly attributed with pain, of course.
Yep.
And so pain is something that is occurring because something's not right in the body, but then there's also the perception of pain, which is its whole separate animal. And so we have to be sure that we are addressing both of those issues for the patient. And so absolutely, again, we do not get sick for any other reason than either there's a structural issue or there's a deficiency or an imbalance. And even if there is, a congenital defect or some sort of a structural issue in the body, because of that, because it's not quote unquote normal for the body, it puts the body under stress. Yes. And when the body's under stress, then it begins to try and pull nutrients from all different areas of the body. And therefore, some of those different areas will get depleted. Now we have a depletion that we need to replete to bring the body back into balance. That's how all of those things kind of connect to one another.
I love that. That is probably the best I've heard it. I've heard people try to explain that, but that was good. It's like you've done this before. That was awesome. I was listening, following you along on that, and I was like, wow, yeah, that's great, good stuff. Thank you for that. That was incredibly. Sorry, I'm like, wow. Well, how come nobody else has ever done that? Like, explain that to me in 46 years of going to the doctor. Oh man, that's crazy. Oh, okay. Well, so speaking of that, how do people reach you? I mean, we've had this QR code here with your website. So that QR code is going to go to your website, or the website's right there. What are they going to find when they go there?
When they go to my website, they'll find a little bit about my story, because I want to make the connection with my patients personal. We're all very unique. We're not cookie cutter. And I think that understanding that myself, that I've been there and I can put myself in a lot of other people's shoes in that regard, makes the connection genuine. I want people to know that choose to work with me, that I am their advocate. I'm there for them. And the testing that we do might be a one-time testing, but they have my forever support, because everybody deserves to have that. We all deserve to have someone that can guide us, onto this long-lasting path of wellness that isn't just a fad or something like that. So they'll find some more just, brief information about my story, how I got to where I'm at, and how I take a different approach. So I don't use a Band-Aid approach. When people come to work with me, typically what they're seeking is answers to these questions that they have not been able to get answered by a conventional doctor or by the different remedies or tools that they've sought out so far. A lot of times people are throwing their hands up at this point. And they say, honestly, I've tried everything. And, weight loss is actually a big deal for a lot of people that come to me. They say, I've literally tried everything. I've tried all the diets. I've tried everything my nutritionist told me, my doctor told me, my trainer told me, all those things. And so I'm looking for a revelation for people to come to when they come to me. So when someone comes to me and they're looking for or curious about if their genetics play a role in their wellness, I will recommend certain types of testing for them based on what they're trying to achieve. So my intake process is very thorough because I want to have a full history of what's going on with the patient before I ever make a recommendation of what type of testing to do. Yeah. Once we do the testing, and I can be reached through the website to initiate this process, we do a free consult to get started. Be sure we're a good fit. Be sure we're on the same page about the top primary concerns of what we're trying to address. But once we proceed with testing, then I drop ship the testing kit to the patient's home. They just do a simple cheek swab, 30 seconds on each side, mail it back to the lab. I get the results, and then that's where my work really begins, is I pull apart the results of those DNA tests and overlap them with the symptoms that we've talked about, with the wellness goals you're trying to achieve, so that I can create a plan for you that has longevity, that you can stick with, that is designed for you. Not for the masses, it's designed for you. So every recommendation that I make, if that is rearranging the supplements that you're on, or the medications, or adding in additional lifestyle changes, or removing certain foods and this happens all the time. The dietary portion is a big part of what I do. Yeah. But all you have to do is make oftentimes small changes to really, swing big doors here. Is, hey, just eliminate this one food out of your diet and you're going to have an absolute game-changing experience. Because what you don't recognize is this one thing that you're eating on a daily basis is really causing an exorbitant amount of inflammation in your body. So something as simple as that, can be a recommendation. But we focus on the supplementation and the medication, the lifestyle changes, the dietary changes, also any labs that may need to be done. And I do not run labs. I don't do blood labs, but I do communicate. I work kind of as the liaison between you and your physician to understand and make these recommendations of what's going to be best. Because once we have a good idea of really how the DNA is behaving, we can say, well, we need to keep a better eye on the hemoglobin A1C, or a better eye on the vitamin D, or the sex hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, it depending on the person, right? Yeah. So when people go to my website, they'll find a little bit more information about that. I don't take the Band-Aid approach. Everything is done one-on-one with me. It's very important to me that people come to me, they sign up with me, they get the service with me, and they get the support with me going forward. I have a full-time job as a pharmacist in a pharmacy, and I do this outside of the pharmacy because I love it and I see the impact that it makes for people. So it's really important for me for people to feel that one-on-one connection with me, with their testing, with their results, and with the longevity of their wellness plan going forward.
I love that. And from what throughout the time that we've been here talking about this, I keep thinking, and over the last several months of guests that I've had, so many of them in this space, and when I say this space, I mean the alternative, which really shouldn't be alternative, honestly. I mean, come on. Can't we all play along together? You know, let's have the traditional medical and the alternative come together. Maybe we'll do better. But I hear the words last resort a lot. Like, I've tried everything else and we're doing this. But what? I think that's part of the conditioning too, right? Like, go to the doctor, do what he says first, and then if everything they tell you to do doesn't work, then maybe go outside the medical model and look around. But what if we did it the other way around? And instead, what if we went the more natural route first? And God forbid you had to go into the medical world to fix or maybe not fix, address, treat the problem. You know, I don't. Why is that not more of a thing?
Think horses, not zebras, right? You don't have to get fancy with it. Just because someone wears a white coat, which I don't, by the way, but just because they wear a white coat doesn't mean that they know everything. And I always want to remind people that we all are humans. Pharmacists, physicians, take the healthcare professional, you name it. We all went through conventional training, more or less, and we're humans. And you really need to be sure that you're choosing people that you bring onto your healthcare team that are transparent. So if that's a pharmacy, if that's a pharmacist, if it's a physician, tell me where you source your product from. I want to understand what your quality processes are. How do I know that what you're telling me I'm getting is what I'm getting? Because how often, Jeff, do we just take somebody's word for it? Please don't just take somebody's word. You need to know exactly what's happening because it's your body. You only have one of them. You need to know exactly what's going on with it.
How many pharmacists would know what to do with that, though? If I walked into the pharmacy and said, well, okay, hold on just a sec. Because they ask me, I mean, every time I've had to go there for, with one of our kids or something, like one of them had to have an antibiotic or whatever, and whatever it is, you go in there and they say, do you have questions? Do you have any questions? Those are not the questions they're anticipating. They're probably thinking, how do I take it? Can I take it with food? Should I take it? All the normal ones. But like if you went in there and they said, do you have any questions? And you started rattling off stuff that you just said, I don't know if they might kick me out of the pharmacy. I don't know if they would, or maybe they wouldn't even know what to say. Is it typical that if I walked into the pharmacy and started asking those questions, should they be able to answer them?
They should be able to answer them. Now, if you walk into a box chain store that has all these bottles on the shelf and that's what they're dispensing from, the medications that you're getting essentially repackaged from bottles that they receive. They're just going to give you basically the patient printout of the manufacturer. But, if you're choosing to get medications from that place, then you're probably also expecting that level of information in return. Of course, as a compounding pharmacist, I'm a huge advocate for compounding pharmacy for many reasons, but the way that we structure our pharmacy is very different. And, because we make everything there right on site, our patients do come in and ask us those questions. They say, well, I want to know where you're sourcing your raw powder from. What kind of fillers are in it? And that we probably shouldn't end today without at least me mentioning this, is that so many people think that they have drug allergies. And that can happen. It's not as common as people think it is. And typically when I ask someone, okay, so tell me about that. You've marked here that you have an allergy to XYZ, whatever that is. Tell me what happened. Well, I had a really bad stomach ache. Okay. That's not a drug allergy. A drug allergy, if you break out in full hives on your whole body, we're talking about a drug allergy reaction now. So in compounding, a lot of what we're doing is customizing the medication primarily with the fillers. If you go online and you look at the ingredients that are in that antibiotic or that tablet, you're going to see carnauba wax. You're going to see shellac, the same stuff that women put on their nails. You're going to see different types of dyes that are not okay in, let's say, conditions like autism. They're going to completely be neurotoxic to children. So, I mean, we're talking about putting these unnecessary dyes, binders, fillers, shellacks, coatings in our body that we don't need. That's not part of the deal. Those are really only there so you can tell one pill from the other. So, if you go into a pharmacy, especially compounding pharmacy, ask them, what's the filler? Is it lactose? Because if they're using cheap fillers, it's probably lactose. You want something that's more plant-based that you're not going to react to, because you don't need all that extra junk in there, right? As clean as it can be is even better. You know, I have a lot of people come to me and they say, well, I can't take that because I react to everything. I'm like, you probably react to all the other stuff. Let's get you a clean product, because you've been to so many doctors and they've told you, well, it's all in your head. I can't figure out what's going on with you. So I'm going to just write you a prescription for this. It's like, listen, you can't discount supplements and medications. There are options for you out there. You need to work with someone that can help you find the right ones.
Right. So okay. I live in a pretty big city. Where do I look to if I didn't want to just have a medication or, whatever, go to just, like a Kroger or a Walgreens or whatever, how would I find a compounding pharmacy even? Like where I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, how do you find one of those in a city?
Yeah, the best thing to do is going to be looking for pharmacies that are PCAB accredited. That's PCAB. It stands for the Pharmacy Compounding Accreditation Board. So it doesn't mean that the pharmacy is regulated by them. It means that particular pharmacy is going a step above to adhere by stricter regulations to be sure that all of their compounding processes, their operating procedures, et cetera, is exceeding what is required. Okay. So if you want a good pharmacy, you want to choose a PCAB accredited pharmacy so that you be sure that they're doing what they should be doing and that your medication will be consistent month over month, because that becomes really important if we're talking about something like a thyroid medication. Products that we refer to as narrow therapeutic drugs, where just a little bit, just a microgram difference makes a difference in your body. So you want to be sure that dosage is consistent month over month. So choose a PCAB accredited pharmacy.
All right. That's good. That's good to know, because I was thinking, how do I even look for that? So that's good to know. That's what I'll look for. And one last thing, and then we're down to about 3 minutes here. We're almost done. We're almost out of time, which is unbelievable. Time flies. But first, I've got a question for you. Why no white coat? You said you don't wear white coats. I'm just dying to know why.
Well, for one, there's something called white coat syndrome, where that's an actual thing that I was taught in pharmacy school. Wow. Is that, white coat syndrome essentially is where it's very anxiety inducing for a patient who comes in. If someone has white coat syndrome, that their blood pressure skyrockets. So for one, that can give you a very inaccurate reading if you are measuring pressure. They're like, it wasn't like this 10 minutes ago at home, I swear. But that's one. But also, I think it makes it much more relatable. Also, when I do like what you're seeing right now, I see my patients virtually that I do for the genomics testing. But when I actually go to work in the pharmacy, my particular pharmacy, we wear suits. And we do that to be at a higher level of professionalism. Now, of course, if someone is in the back compounding drugs, they're not wearing a suit. They're wearing a lot of protective gear. But it's a way to present yourself professionally, but also as another human being. We are all on an equal playing field here, and I want my patients to have the ultimate level of comfort.
I love it. That's great. That's a perfect answer. I was hoping it was something like that. Trying to distance yourself from the traditional, right. Other big box pharmacies. So that's awesome. Right. I love that. Right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're down to we got about 30 seconds to go. You have just one last parting thought that you'd want to leave everybody with?
Yes, please still feel empowered to seek ultimate healing. If you're not feeling your best every day, just know this, you absolutely deserve to feel your best. And there are people out there that do want to help you and will work with you and partner with you to find out what the root cause of your illness or ailment is. So please stay encouraged, stay informed, and know that there is an explanation for what's going on.
And for everybody that's been here and watching, that QR code has been there almost the entire last half hour of the show. And so I'm going to take it away now, but you can go back and watch and scan it so that you can get in touch. So because that's the best way to reach out and actually take advantage of some of this and get the information that you need. So, but thank you, Bryana. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the amazing knowledge. And I feel like I have my brain is still exploding just a little bit, but this was awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you opening up this platform and allowing us to have conversations like this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Here we go. We got I'm still, my brain is still reeling. I'm so excited to go look online and go find a PCAB pharmacy so I can go and actually get good stuff if I ever need to. So anyway, all right. If you have a favorite episode, first of all, thank you for watching, by the way. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you have a favorite episode, it's probably somebody else's too. So like, share, subscribe to whatever channel you're watching it on. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And I will look forward to seeing you again on the next episode, which will be Tuesday, February 27th. So we will see you then. Till then, have an amazing day.